Amazon Prime's television adaptation of Bethesda's Fallout games had a lot of potential going in. Helmed by Jonathan Nolan and backed by a solid cast and talented creative team, there was reason to hope we may actually get a decent adaptation of these video games. But hope is a dangerous thing in today's media landscape. It was hard to get too excited about this show when there was still a rather strong chance it would end up being another Wheel of Time or Rings of Power. Another adaptation ruined by talentless activists pushing agenda over narrative. However, Amazon has now released all 8 episodes of its first season together, and having watched them all, I can confidently say those worst fears have not been realized. I think Fallout has some significant flaws, but it also ranks as one of the best Prime original series they've delivered to date. And they've clearly done something right, because sales numbers and Steam charts show massive numbers of people are returning to play the Fallout games. Fallout 4 has become the best-selling title in the UK. Fallout 76, New Vegas, and Fallout 3 have also made the top 10 in that region. Likewise, Fallout 4 went from around 20,000 players on Steam back on April 11th to 160,000 on April 21st. So from this perspective, the show is a resounding success. But let's take a closer look at this show and see how it holds up under its own merits. If you are watching this to discover if Fallout is worth watching, or if it devolves into a vehicle for a bunch of woke Hollywood messaging, the simple answer is yes, it's worth watching. And no, it doesn't have a lot of progressive propaganda. If you are a fan of the Fallout games or post-apocalyptic adventure stories, then you may find something to like here. As I dig into this, I will be discussing some elements of the main plot and some of the character arcs. I will do my best not to spoil everything, but if you want to go in as blind as possible, you may want to hop off here before we enter spoiler territory. Set in the year 2296, the show takes place 9 years after Fallout 4, which places it securely after the events of all of the games in the series, which is significant when it comes to one of the season's biggest twists. We focus in on 3 main protagonists that each come from very different backgrounds. Walton Goggins' character, Cooper Howard, comes from before the war that laid waste to everything, and though he lived through the nuclear holocaust, it transformed him into a ghoul, an irradiated living corpse who is immortal. But over time, ghouls tend to lose their sense of self and become feral, mindless monsters. But thanks to a ruthless devotion to an unnamed drug, Cooper has managed to survive the past 200 years without going feral. Next is Ella Purnell's Lucy, a resident of Vault 33. Lucy's father is abducted from their home after it's invaded by raiders from the surface. Desperate to get him back, Lucy leaves the safety of the vault and sets out across the wastelands to find him. Third is Aaron Motton as Maximus, an initiate in the Brotherhood of Steel. This unique group is part military and part religious cult. They claim to want to bring order to the wastelands, but their primary activities involve finding and preserving pieces of pre-war technology. Maximus starts out at the bottom of the hierarchy, but makes progress when he's made the personal assistant to an armor-wearing fighter. After the first episode sets up these characters and some basics about the world, the second episode gets things rolling. Both Cooper and the Brotherhood of Steel are chasing after a scientist named Wilzig, who smuggled out a top-secret, highly valuable piece of technology, which he is bringing to the same person who abducted Lucy's father, a woman named Moldaver. Lucy and Wilzig's paths cross fairly early on, and Lucy ends up getting pulled into this MacGuffin hunt when she learns that bringing this guy to where he's going might just be enough to get her father back. Unfortunately, due to conflict and violence from all sides, Wilzig doesn't make it very far, which is a shame because Michael Emerson is a welcome addition to the cast and lends his brief time on screen a good deal of weight. As he is dying, Wilzig tells Lucy to decapitate him and to take his head to Moldaver. The next few episodes center on the hunt and the fight over this severed head. It changes hands a few times, and at one point it even gets eaten by a large mutant creature. Elsewhere, after Maximus's knight is killed, Max decides to take his armor and impersonate the knight. He believes that if he is able to deliver the head MacGuffin to the Brotherhood of Steel, they will reward him by letting him keep his stolen valor. Of course, as their respective quests cross one another, Maximus and Lucy meet up. The two misfits form a friendship and work together to overcome some of the dangers of the wastelands. Teaming these two characters up makes a lot of sense, because they come from parallel worlds, raised in sheltered environments that have shaped the way they perceive the world, only to have those perspectives challenged once they're out on their own, away from the protection of their communities. Struggling to adapt, they find a strange kind of solace in each other, which provides a bit of character growth for Maximus before they are forced apart again. Between these scenes, we get cutaways to Cooper, who is stalking the others, as well as a number of flashbacks that fill us in on Cooper's backstory, as well as more information on how the Vault started and what led to the nuclear war. There's also an E-plot that concerns the ongoings of Vault 33 after Lucy left. It adds layers to the world lore and eventually does tie into the greater plot, but there's a lot here that feels like filler. By the last episode, Lucy finally does make it to Moldaver with her MacGuffin head. She finds her father and the truth of the secret technology that she's just delivered. But instead of giving Lucy her father back, Moldaver decides to give her an exposition dump that fills in a bunch of plot information and changes how we view some of the key parts and characters of this season. Lucy doesn't really have time to process this before Cooper and the Brotherhood of Steel descend on them, and an all-out battle ensues. When the dust settles, it's hard to say who wins and who loses. The story wraps up, leaving more questions than answers, and provides a very clear jumping-off point for the second season they clearly assumed they were going to get. All in all, the first season of Fallout does a good job of bringing the world of the video games to television. Most of the world building is done in a way that makes sense. The characters are well written, and most of the performances are strong enough to carry what they need to. Though I think Maximus is the weakest of the three leads, he does improve as the season goes on. Ella Purnell does a lot with what she's given to work with, though I think she comes off as far too reactionary in the finale. The strength and agency she's built over the last 7 episodes evaporates after the 11th hour revelations Moldaver casually drops on her, and us. It's disappointing. Had these reveals occurred in the penultimate episode, Lucy may have had the breathing room she needed to make more intentional, purposeful actions in the finale. That said, the standout in this first season is Walton Goggins' Cooper Howard. Goggins owns every scene he's in and elevates all of the actors he shares the screen with. He's also the most robust and fleshed out of the characters. Like Cooper or hate him, by the end of the season, his motivations and behavior make a lot of sense. You may not agree with what he does, but you understand why he's doing it. Some of the dialogue is a bit clunky, and though the show is generally free of political messaging, there are a couple exceptions. Most of these stemming from a side plot depicting a tension between capitalism and communism in Cooper's pre-war flashbacks. The most egregious of these is when a character actually says, "I'm not a communist. That's just a dirty word we made up for people who aren't crazy." But this commentary doesn't really go anywhere, and it doesn't weigh down the plot. The show also falters a bit when it comes to the editing. Because it jumps between 5 different plot threads, none of them are given enough time to develop. And in the end, Season 1 feels like a very long setup for Season 2. That isn't to say I don't like it. I actually enjoy this show, and I think it's a fair adaptation of the Fallout games. It has a lot of moments that work well, due to some decent performances from the cast. The production design is nearly perfect, and there's plenty of gory action which fits the overall tone and matches the source material. In a time where so many franchises have been corrupted with agenda and messaging, Fallout stands out as just a bit of mindless fun, and is well deserving of a watch. But as always, remember this is just a Rebel's opinion. What do you think? Have you watched Fallout? What are your thoughts on it? If you appreciated this review, hit that like button, and subscribe to the channel so you'll get all the latest commentary and reviews right here on Rebel Normal.